Craig Brown, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you, sir, very much for having me.
You're a member of the panel that will be speaking to people after tomorrow night's screening. What kinds of questions are you expecting? What do you hope comes out of that discussion?
I think what we hope would come out of this discussion, it's really just, even the point of the film, just a questioning of the background with hockey, the role that racialized persons have played in the sport of hockey, specifically Black persons, but even just that notion of let's look at how we can representation within hockey and tell that unified story going forward.
What was the most surprising thing that came out of the research that you and other team members did looking at racism in sport in Winnipeg?
There are quite a few surprising things that came out, but I'll target the fact that the racism that persons explained that they experienced within sport in Winnipeg, it had so many levels to it. It was institutionalized and systemic. You had persons who had experienced so much overt racism that it's left them with a lot of emotional and psychological trauma. But you had so many situations where nothing was being done, and that sport organizations were failing in their role as it relates to actually doing something about it. And also with that, just how prevalent it was. And it felt many persons racism didn't exist when you would speak to people in general, but when we spoke to our participants, we recognized based on their responses, if it didn't happen to them, they'd witnessed it in some way, shape, or form, and it was more rampant than we expected it to be.
How hopeful are you that conversations like the one you'll be having tomorrow night and the conversation we're having now are moving the needle on that, changing things?
Oh, when it's something like racism or something that's been entrenched for a while, I think moving the needle is relative in the sense that sometimes we think that move has to be a big jump. But for us, having a discussion like tomorrow, it's a small step or a small moving of the needle in the right direction, in the sense that at one point, as I mentioned, these discussions wouldn't take place in such an open forum. But now we have the opportunity to have more of these discussions. So we believe that even just having the platform to have these discussions will actually play its part, because that's one of the main things that our participants shared. They really want more awareness. They would love more education for those within sport and within the regular society about what's happening and about the voices of those who are racialized within sport in Canada.
If there's someone listening who's been involved in sport and perhaps, doesn't feel that this is an issue because perhaps in their skin it just hasn't been a problem, what would you say to them?
Oh, I would say to them, first and foremost, I respect your opinion and I respect your experience. I'm not here to tell you that your experience isn't valid. I would just encourage you to speak to other persons who are racialized within your sport or within other sports, or to even just step back a little bit and take a different look at your sports space. Because for many of our participants, there were some who didn't identify as racialized, who said that they were in the same shoes. They didn't see any racism. They didn't think of anything happening in their sports spaces. But when they spoke to some of their friends and when they decided to step back, they started to look with more objective eyes, and they recognized that the sports spaces that they thought were safe were the furthest thing from safe for those who were racialized.
Craig Brown, thank you for your time tonight.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.